go.
What was the question about
Well,
Chicago?
we were talking about the first Chicon. Harry Warner says there was a banquet and it cost $1.
Indeed there was. I think it was $1.25. Now you recall in 1940, none of us had much money. And I was probably one of the very few people there who had the money to ride to Chicago on the Greyhound bus. I couldn't afford to stay at the hotel where the convention was taking place. I stayed at the YMCA hotel, which is a couple blocks down the street, and it only cost $1 a night.
Ah.
And there's a large number of fans with me. 20 or 30 or 40 fans stayed down there with me.
At the YMCA?
Yeah, but not in my room.
Well, that's good.
And we had a Dr. Smith, Dr. E.E. Smith, the Lensman man, was the guest of honor. His wife and I believe 2 of his daughters were with him. And the banquet was held in the hotel, and not in the meeting room, but in a separate room. And I think there was something like, at a rough guess, maybe 50, maybe 55 people there. And I believe it cost $1.25 a plate. And we had the usual rubber chicken. Well, $1.25 for rubber chicken in those days, pretty high, which was why the attendance was so low at a banquet. Only 50 people could afford $1.25 for dinner. You could get a meal for 35 or 40 cents in those days at the restaurant outside of the hotel.
Right.
Doc gave a speech. I don't remember his wife gave the speech, but one of his daughters also got up to talk. And her talk was the hit of the show. She outshone her dad. She was better than Doc Smith in this sense. She told an anecdote about I believe she made it a young fan that she knew, a male fan that she knew. And he'd been in a series of accidents. He was in one accident and he lost his left arm. He was in another accident and lost his right arm. And he lost this leg, then he lost that leg. And pretty soon there was nothing left of him except his personality. And that brought down the house because they all had dirty minds. And that's why Doc's daughter gave a better speech than Doc did. His was the usual enthusiastic thank you speech. And I'm trying to recall if the 1939 convention in New York had a guest of honor. I think it did. I think it was Frank R. Paul, the artist. I believe it was Frank Paul. And we had no artist guest of honor in Chicago. Just Doc, I believe, was the only one. The skeleton was the surprise guest of honor.
Right.
And I'm trying to remember whether or not we had a masquerade, or at least a costume function of any kind. I cannot recall. I just simply can't. We're going to have to go back and read Harry Warner again. Yeah. We may have had the first costume call.
We did.
We did?
Yes.
Aha. Because I recall seeing Doc Smith there. He was dressed up. Doc rode a motorcycle in those days, and he had the motorcycle clothing that would be appropriate for 1940. He looked like Northwest Smith, who was the hero out of one of the magazines. Weird Tales, wherever the Northwest Smith stories were published. I don't think it was Astounding. I don't recall it there. And he came as Northwest. He was dressed up as Northwest Smith. I'm trying to think if any other person there was in costume. Logic tells me that at least 2 of them were. Ackerman, of course, had to have some kind of a costume.
If Forey was there,
yes,
I'm pretty sure he was.
He was there. And there were 2 other fans from Los Angeles, 2 women. One of them they were Esperanto fans. One of them was called Morollo, and the other was called Pogo, I believe. And they both wore costumes of some kind, but I don't remember what they were. So if Forey was there, the 3 of them would be together.
Okay.
And Forey and the 2 women were rich enough that they could afford a room at the hotel where the convention was held. The rest of us went down the street to the YMCA, but they got to stay in the hotel. You realize, Tom, that hotel rooms were, at that day, probably cost as much as $3 and $4 a night. Now, this is in the Loop, mind you. And we couldn't afford $3 or $4 a night for a bed. Not when the YMCA would let you sleep in their bed for $1.
Now, Costs have gone up, of course, but
Somebody told me that the hotel you're in this year wants what, 100 and something for a room?
109 is the deal. That's before the taxes, of course.
Uh-huh.
102 if you're for a single room.
102.
Yeah, which is pretty good for the Loop. Probably the best price you're going to be able to find.
Dick, that $102 room is the very same room the fans in 1940 could have had for $4. The only thing new is they put new wallpaper on the wall.
Well, I think they actually put up a new Hyatt, but I understand what you mean.
I went, in the early years, I went to a number of conventions in Cincinnati, the Midwest Cons,
Yeah.
and for a number of years we went to the same motel on Reading Road. I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Would that be the Quality Inn?
No,
On Reading.
Reading. Huh?
Oh, gee.
And in the early years, when we first started going over there, the rooms were $2 and $3 a night.
Okay, yeah, that's
By the
certainly
time we
before the
finished,
quality.
well, when we
Yeah.
left there and moved to the big hotels
Mhm.
downtown, it shot up to $8 a night. And we were outraged, the idea of paying $8 a night for a hotel room, that 5 years ago we slept in for $2 or $3 a night.
Yeah.
And that's when the Tucker Hotel was born.
Ah,
I decided that I could build a hotel and move it from city to city to city for each new convention and keep the rate at $1 a night for all things. And it worked. You'll find that in Harry Warner's too. In fact, you'll find it in several fanzines of that day.
well, it was a popular cause, and fans sent their bricks to you.
We got bricks in the mail. I don't know, 60, 70, maybe more. And in those days I had a post office box because I never advertised my home address. I didn't want fans dropping in unannounced, unexpected, and saying feed me and put me up for the night. So I lived in a post office box. When you send a package to a post office box, the box is the small thing.
Right.
The clerk puts a little yellow card in the box. They come to the window, we're holding a package for you. And so every time I'd get a brick, he'd put a little card in. I'd pick up the yellow card, go around to the window, slide it across the desk to him, not the desk, the counter. He would slide a brick back to me. Neither one of us would say a word. We just look at one another. He wanted in the worst way to know why I was getting all these bricks, but I suppose his job didn't allow him to ask. And I wasn't going to explain it, so I had to. And I wound up with, as I say, possibly 60 or 70 bricks before the joke wore out. And then some fan in Minneapolis topped me. He one-upped me. He realized that I was accumulating a whole lot of bricks for my own use. And he thought, now that's not fair. So he started a campaign to send me envelopes of straw so I could make my own bricks. And I began to get envelopes filled with straw. I can't remember the man's name. He was in Minneapolis at the time, but I take my hat off to him today because he did one-up me. That was a good topper.
Yeah. Where are the bricks now? I didn't see them out in the backyard before.
No, we used to live in a town called Hayworth when she and I were first married. And the bricks, to my knowledge, we left them behind the garage. And we've never been back to check. They still may be there, or who knows, perhaps the new owner used them to build a sidewalk or maybe an edging around his garden for some reason. But I don't have the nerve to go back and say, hey, I want my bricks now.
No, I guess they're gone.
And we couldn't take them with us because it'd been just too much weight for the
Yeah.
moving men, weight and expense for the moving men. So we left them in Hayward. And you realize something. In all the years Fern and I have been married, 47 years now, she has never asked me, when she sees people like you guys come to the house, hundreds of you have come to visit, she never says to me, where do you find all these strange people? How do you put up with these odd ones?
Well, that's because she knows we're on our best behavior when we come here, and
Yes.
we're lots odder the rest of the time.
Yes. And she is so polite, she won't hit you with the broom until you pull something inexcusable.
No, we're not going to steal your books.
Good, because if you touch anything in that bookcase, we'll both hit you with the broom. Dick Spellman was here one day. Now, I don't have the books out right now, the books we're talking about. When I was with everything on the top shelf were first editions, including those paperbacks. When I was being published by Reinhardt and Company, it was their practice each year as a Christmas gift to me. They would give me my book that they had published that year, a special edition leather bound. And I wound up with about 12 to 14 leather bound editions before Reinhardt dumped me. Dick Spellman saw those, and he made an estimate. I wanted an estimate for insurance purposes. He made an estimate of possibly $1,000 a copy.
Okay.
Because they were one of a kind,
Right.
leather bound, these special end papers and everything as a Christmas gift. And as far as we know, nobody else had a copy, just me alone. They each one of their writers, their authors, got that same gift at Christmas.
Except their books, of course, so they were different.
Yes, each person got his own book. For example, see the Wild Talent, the green one sticking out. That year I got a leather-bound copy of Wild Talent.
Okay.
One of our sons has that now in safekeeping. But at one time, I could point to the top shelf and say, there sits $12,000. And I realized I better keep my mouth shut. I'm asking for trouble.
Yeah.
You've seen the books for sale on the web, the mail order bookshops.
Oh, yes.
Every time I find a new one, I go through looking for my own stuff, of course. And Dick, I am absolutely astonished at the prices that some of these dealers are asking for some of my books. Now let me point this out to you and ask you an honest question, and you can answer honestly. Would you pay $92 for a hardbound copy of one of my old ones? And if you say yes, I'm going to say, boy, where's your brains?
Well, I just bought one of yours in a con suite, or in a huckster room. I thought we got a pretty good price.
Well, I hope you didn't pay $92.
It wasn't 92.
Okay.
But it was more than 10.
Well, now that's all right.
You know.
Was it a first edition?
No, it was a reading copy.
Oh.
Paperback.
Yeah, it was a paperback I hadn't read before.
If it's old and rare in the sense of hard to find,
Yeah.
maybe most of the books that I saw, the paperbacks, they were asking $8 to $10 for.
Yeah.
But the hardcovers are going anywhere from $40, and as I say, I found one for $92. I was tempted to sell my only one to get $92 out of it.
Well, you wouldn't be the first author to
True.
be doing that.
But Dick, $92 for a first edition is unless it's Shakespeare, is ridiculous.
First edition collectors are, a funny thing, but all collectors are.
I've met one or two of them. There's a chap in Kansas City, no names, and he's buying up all the hardcovers of mine he can find. And I found out, I think he told me once, he has paid more than $50 for some of my hardcovers.
Yeah.
And I just stood there staring at him with my jaw agape. That, to me, is amazing.
Well, those books, they aren't printing anymore.
True.
And, if you're a first edition collector, you got to have that special one.
Yeah. It just surprises me. I think I prefer the hardcovers to the paperbacks.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to go $5 or $10 for a hardcover I wanted.
Pretty hard to find one for less than that nowadays.
And see the lady over there prompting you. I think the Q lady has a Q for you.
Now, we were talking about like book collectors.
Yes.
For that matter, fans who come to your door that you don't want. And that reminds the Q lady and me too of the famous one, Claude Degler. He's still around.
Yes, and he came to my door, and I wouldn't let him in because I'd been forewarned. By the time he found me here in Bloomington, he used to hitchhike all over the country. And somehow, I don't know how he did it, but he found my house number, my house and street number. I was still living in a post office box.
He may have asked at the post office box where the man who got the bricks lived.
And he came to the door, such as this screen door over here one day, and it had the old-fashioned screen doors that have a hook on them.
Yeah.
I just reached up and hooked it. And we talked back and forth through the screen door, and I wouldn't let him in. He stood there waiting the longest time, wanting me to invite him in. I knew better, because I didn't want to lose those books.
Yeah.
I had been told, it was common knowledge in fanzines, that after he visited you, maybe he stayed overnight or 2 or 3 days with you, when he left, If he was carrying a bag, the bag was full. It was empty when he got there, but it was full when he left.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you realize some of your books are missing. And one time, now this was not Claude, at one time I'm told that Florey Ackerman had to actually close his house and quit giving tours. This is the big house, that is his museum house.
Right.
He actually had to close up his house and quit giving tours because some of his best books were stolen by people coming in to tour the museum. Which reminds me again, let's go back to Chicon, 1940.
Okay.
This was Claude Degler's first appearance at that convention. We didn't know then that he was notorious. He was just another young fan. Oh, I would guess 16, 17, at a guess. And he carried around a sheaf of papers in his hand, and he kept asking the chairman or whoever was in charge of the microphone if he wanted speech time. He wanted to make an announcement, make a speech or something, and the chairman wouldn't give it to him.
Okay.
The chairman was wise. But it turns out that what he was carrying around in his hand, he claimed that he had been in touch with the Martians, and they had sent him this secret message and instructed him to read it to the convention. And he wanted to get up on the stage and read this secret message to us. The chairman wouldn't let him. Chances are the chairman was Mark Reinsberg, and Mark wouldn't let him do it. But I heard later, I read in the fanzines, a year later in Denver, he showed up with the same speech, and they did let him read it. And that's how he found out it was a secret speech from the Martians.
Ah.
But I wasn't in Denver. I couldn't make that one, so I'll never know what the secret message was from the Martians.
Well, if it wasn't reported in fanzines, it probably didn't matter.
I doubt if anyone reprinted it. But that was Claude's first appearance, and from there, he was also in Indiana, but not connected with the Decker Dillies. And when he went home, he launched his Cosmic Circle, I believe the name of his club, and started publishing fanzines. Most of his fanzines were single sheet flyers, broadsides.
Mm-hmm.
Broadside in the old term, the old-fashioned term. And they were always filled with dire predictions of Spanish wars. If he couldn't have this, he would declare war. If he couldn't have that, he would declare war. One day in 1940, 41, in the very early 40s, he turned up at the door of Al Ashley in Battle Creek, Michigan. Al Ashley was having a fan gathering at his house for the weekend.
Okay.
We used to go up there maybe 2 or 3 times a year, and they'd all pile in. He had a huge house, 2 stories with an attic, and he could sleep 20 people. And somebody, somehow or other, Claude found out about this meeting this weekend, and he showed up at the door, and Al wouldn't let him in. Again, Al wouldn't let him in.
Okay.
So Claude turned around, went home, and immediately cranked out another broadside, calling it the Second Exclusion Act. And as a result of this Exclusion Act, all fandom will be plunged into war. Whenever you hear the expression anywhere in fandom, be careful now, you'll plunge all fandom into war. It all started with Claude. And I never saw the war. But he rode high for, 3 or 4 years. He would hitchhike all over the country.
Yeah.
And I understand he went in, I believe Harry Warner mentions this, he went into Brooklyn where a fan was publishing a news zine of that day. The equivalent of File 770 of that day.
Okay.
A mimeographed newsing, a weekly or bi-weekly. And Claude stayed with that fellow for, must have been some weeks, several weeks, helping him with the newsletter and working for the man. The fan was, I believe, a grocery store owner, something to do with the store.
Okay.
And so Claude would eat all the goods out of the store. That's how he kept it. When the fan finally kicked him out and sent him on his way again, several magazines were missing. And the early magazines, like Weird Tales from 1926 and 1930s, they were rare and worth what the first editions are today. And I'm trying to remember the name of the fellow who did it. It wasn't Julie Swartz, Julie Unger.
Okay.
You'll find that, look that up in Harry Warner's. He's probably in the index. And poor Julie lost several valuable magazines. And word of this got around. And Claude got got to the point where his reputation was so bad, when he'd come into a new city and start sponsoring, he'd change his name. I found him in Philadelphia. I went into Philadelphia one year for a convention, PhilCon again, and he was there as Don Rogers.
Ah.
The Philadelphia fans didn't know any different. They'd never seen him before, but when he saw me, he realized the goose was cooked.
Yeah.
And when he went to Los Angeles, he moved into the old Los Angeles fan club when they were on Dixon Street. I don't remember the name he used there. He may have been Don Rogers there, too.
I don't think I've ever heard about him pretending to be somebody else.
He had to use other names because
I guess so.
his own name was the red flag. When a person under that name came to your door or your club to a club meeting, they would let him in.
Yeah.
Because too many people lost books, mostly magazines. In those days, we collected magazines because the hardcovers in the 1930s and 40s, there weren't many hardcovers. There weren't many science fiction books being published. It was mostly magazines. And I suspect that the prices of the old and rare magazines, say an Unknown or an Unknown Worlds from 1940, could easily run $50 or more these days. And you'd ask Frank Robinson about that. I'm told that he has a collection of every pulp, science fiction or weird pulp, ever published in our field. Look at, have you seen his book called Science Fiction? I'm going to have to read it. Science Fiction of the 20th Century.
Yes.
All the pictures in that book, pictures of the covers are taken from his collection. And I believe I've seen a photograph of his. He has one entire wall covered with a magazine rack. The way that wall is covered with the bookshelves, his is magazines. Just hundreds and hundreds of magazines all over in that rack. And that's his not first edition, that's his rare magazine collection. And I understand that every picture of every cover in that book came from his collection.
Must be nice.
It is. And I'll tell you something, the next time, this is my claim to fame, sir. The next time you look at that book, turn to the rear. I believe it's almost the last picture. In fact, it may be the last color cover picture in the book.
Okay.
Is a picture of a color, start again, is the cover of my fanzine, Les Zombies.
Ah.
I have the only fanzine in a book of Pro magazines. And the reason why was Frank had painted that picture.
Okay.
And this was pride. He wanted the world to see the only cover he's ever painted in his life, so far as I know. So it's in his book of famous covers.
Okay.
And the Q lady is handing us another Q. When is the next issue of Les Zombies coming? The last issue was published when I returned from my trip to Australia in 1975.
Could be about time for the next one.
Yes, if I go back to Australia again, I'll think about another copy, another edition.
I was prepared to mention that outside in the car is a brand new old Gestetner mimeograph that I just managed to find a deal on the internet.
Do you realize?
And, maybe we could make an arrangement for printing.
We could set it up on the kitchen table, couldn't we? That's the way I used to print my magazines. I used to have them. Remember, I didn't have a Gestetner. That was expensive, sir. I had a mimeograph from Sears Roebuck, and I put it on the kitchen table and crank out the Zombies. Ah, that's the way it was with us. I wish I could read that cue card. Hey guys, you can't see it, but Leah is sitting over there flashing me cue card.
Yeah.
In the movies, this is called idiot cards, and I can't read the idiot card because I don't have my glasses on.
Which Chicon was that? Speer was nearly arrested
For wearing a costume,
on the street.
Chicon 1.
Chicon
It has to be Chicon 1. I don't remember what the costume was now.
Judge Speer? He was probably young Speer then.
Very young. He was, probably, I would guess, early 20s. Is he in costume in that picture?
No. In fact, everybody in that picture was wearing a coat and tie except the women. And even they've got coat and tie equivalent on. It looks very serious.
That would have been taken then after the convention was over.
Outside the Field Museum.
Yes.
Yeah.
The people who stayed over on Monday after the convention had a field day at the Field Museum. Get it, kid?
Yeah. Now, yeah, apparently Speer on Saturday night during the convention was outside in a golden radio helmet and his helium gun and shorts.
Oh, I remember the gun now. That's probably what caught the cops' attention.
Oh, I suppose, a
Yes.
helium gun, geez.
Because I do remember seeing Doc Smith in his motorcycle garb out on the street, out on the sidewalk. And I know that Jack Speer had some kind of a costume. And now that you mention it, I think I think the gun was gold in color.
Okay. Now this mentions the golden radio helmet. It also says he managed to get out of it by producing some federal employee ID.
He was
so
working,
maybe he was working for the government.
I believe he and Milty Rothman were both working in Washington at that time.
You know, I think 50 years later, I got to tell a woman in a hotel coffee shop, "Don't worry, Judge Speer will stop singing in a minute."
Yes.
So he never did improve, did he?
No. But we never called him the hanging judge. To my knowledge, he never hung any culprit.
Geez, what else could have happened during that first Chicon?
What haven't we covered?
Parties? Were there fan parties then?
I don't remember.
Uh-oh, guess there were parties.
I know that there was no liquor, to my knowledge. We didn't drink then like they do at conventions today. I can recall...
Harry mentioned the bar.
I can do...
The pros were in the bar?
Everybody was in the bar.
Everybody was in the bar.
Near the YMCA.
I do recall on the walk between the convention hotel and the YMCA hotel, let's say 3 or 4 blocks down the street, there were a number of bars along State Street, of course, and those of us who were over 21 could go in and get a beer on the way back to the YMCA that night. The young kids who were under 21 would stand outside on the sidewalk and watch us. They'd peer through the door or the window and watch us.
Okay.
And we'd go in and have a beer. Well, that made the people inside the bar, it made the bartender a little antsy when there was a bunch of fans out there staring in the door, you see. But I was one of the few people, for example, the committee, the rest of the committee were all teenagers. They couldn't go in and drink with me. I was the one. Now I know. That's why they wanted me on the committee. Not only could I legally sign checks, I could also legally have a beer. That's why.
Well, that didn't mean you brought them any.
No, heavens, no. Perish the thought.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't have done that.
No.
The Harry Warner says in his book that Forey refused to drink a bottle of soda pop because he was afraid it might end his career as a teetotaler.
Yes. To my knowledge, he's never had a drink to this day, a drink of alcohol to this day.
I guess I can believe that. He's probably had some soda pop by now. He's probably figured out it's okay.
Well, Forey was also an adult. He was over 21 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Forey is within 2 to 3 years of my age. So, but he didn't go in the saloon with me.
Yeah.
He never went in and had a beer with me.
Didn't even go in and watch?
No, probably not. Probably stood out down the street with the teenagers watching it. So he had high principles and he would not go in. I'm running out of ideas.
Well, what else can we ask about?
I think we've covered the end.
Actually, there's one other thing. I was in doing some of the reading about the various Chicons. At Chicon 3, apparently, you were tricked and you signed an autograph. That's when you joined the N3F. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
History records it.
You're going to have to tell me that story.
It's
I don't recall being tricked.
It's
Wonder
in
what they told me I was signing up for.
Well, it's in old Walter Breen's history. It's in Walter Breen's convention report, Our Fan in Chicago, which was written about the '62 convention.
Yes.
And it said you signed a little slip of paper, and then it was auctioned for a couple of dollars or something. And eventually, it was discovered that this slip of paper was an N3F application form, and apparently fans hurried to join the N3F so that they could be put on the well committee and write you a letter that said, "Dear Bob Tucker, welcome to fandom," which of course is what the N3F did in those days.
Yes, but I do not remember that at all.
Yeah.
Luckily, that slipped away.
Well, just as well, I guess. Breen reports that one, and apparently. Let's see, it says Vic Ryan pulled this trick on you.
He was from Springfield, Illinois at the time, yes.
Okay.
And I got my, let me think, he gave me my first Gestetner, a really old one,
Yeah?
which I never used. He left it at the house. It stayed on the shelf or in the closet for a while.
Mhm.
And I passed it on to the lady who lived in Beecher, Illinois. What was her name?
Jackie Frank.
Jackie Frank. I passed it on to her, and she cranked out her fanzine on it.
Okay.
I preferred my Sears mimeograph. Never did use that Gestetner.
When's the last time you ran the Sears mimeograph, and where is it now? You're going to
Well,
say
now,
it's
let me
back with
think.
that brick cat house?
No. What was the year that Abe Lincoln graduated from high school? It's probably that long ago.
I'm pretty sure you published after that, but maybe not very many years after.
But not on... Dick, you're asking things so far back that I no longer have... I have no idea what happened to that mimeograph. I suppose I gave it to someone, or I may have put it up for auction.
Mhm.
You recall in the old days when we needed to raise money for this fund or that fund? Everybody would donate things. I used to donate old fanzines, a lot of my personal stuff.
I have an empty liquor bottle I own autographed by you.
And you paid money for that,
I
guess.
certainly did, more than it was worth by, all of it.
Did you get any of the contents?
No. It was empty before it was auctioned. That
Too
was
bad.
part of the joke.
Bad. Okay. But, so somebody, I know maybe Jackie got both of them, both the mimeograph and the Gestetner, but I don't recall her doing so. She and her husband came to visit us in Hayworth one day, one weekend, I suppose. And I recall unloading the Gestetner on her then. And you know, when she still lived in Beecher before she moved to Cincinnati, she used to crank out a lot of fanzines.
Yeah.
She was a publishing giant.
Even in Cincinnati, she published
Mhm.
quite a bit for a long time.
Yep.
Shame to have lost her.
Yes.
Well,
Have you noticed something? I keep watching the Q lady over there. She's run out of cue cards. She can't think of anything new.
Oh, I could think of
any
things.
more ideas?
Maybe talk a little bit about how fandom changed over the 60 years you were going to conventions, some of the differences between the early days and later.
Other than attendance at conventions.
Well, attendance went up, but did the people change any? I
Yes,
guess.
we stopped wearing coats and ties.
When that happened?
I don't know. It must have been gradual and I never noticed it. But as you notice in the early pictures, we'd go to a convention banquet. For example, the one in Chicago 1940, I probably wore a coat and tie. Most of the men around me probably did too. And I can recall wearing coats and ties at the Midwest cons in the 40s and 50s. But somewhere along the way, we got rid of that habit.
You mean people were wearing coats and ties when they were throwing those water balloons out the window and punching through doors?
No, at banquets.
Oh, at the banquet.
No.
Okay.
Do you realize that
I mean, those are the famous things that happened
Yes.
at the Midwest Con.
They'd be
At
a
least the famous things we can talk about in the family videotape.
there was a fan up on the second or third floor who was dropping water balloons out on the people passing down below?
Do you remember who that was?
Yes, but I'm afraid to mention names because they're both still alive and they're both still in
Oh,
fandom.
that's true.
I don't want to get sued.
Oh, and that one, at least one of those would make trouble.
Yes, both of them are still in fandom.
Yeah.
Or at least both of them are still in science fiction. And as far as I know, they do come to conventions. So let us say Fan 1 and Fan 2. Fan 1 was dropping water balloons or something in holy water on Fan 2 down on the sidewalk. And Fan 2 got a little upset and he came charging up the stairs and pounded on the guy's door. Fan 1 had locked the door and wouldn't let him in, so Fan 2 kicked the door down and got in. Well, by this time, Fan 1 was running out the window and down the fire escape to get away from him because Fan 2 was a big fellow. Fan 1 was a short fellow.
That identifies Fan 1 pretty well, doesn't it?
Fan 2 was a big hulky fellow.
Okay.
So Fan 1 made a quick retreat out the window and down the fire escape. And the result was the hotel manager came around. I don't remember whether he called the police or not. I do believe I saw a policeman there. But Doc Barrett, who was in charge of the convention, passed the hat, and we took up enough money to repair or replace the broken door, and the hotel manager didn't press charges because we paid the costs.
Okay.
It was great in the old days.
Well,
But after that, Fan 1 didn't drop any more water balloons.
I guess not. I don't know if fandom's changed that much. I think we still have problems with water at conventions every once in a while.
There are still hooligans, shall we say. Happy-go
Yeah.
hooligans. You know, a fan maybe have one beer too many and he feels pretty good about it and he does something rash.
Well, there's some of those, and, you know, every once in a while there's a bad egg too. We can't help it.
True.
You know, not too many, fortunately. Fandom's good that way. You know, you think the fans have changed in those 60 years, or
No.
other than taking the tie off?
No, we're still the same happy hooligans we were then. There are more adults now. There were an awful lot of kids then. Recall me saying that other than myself, all the rest of my committee were teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
You notice convention people now are no longer teenagers. They're old gray-beard adults.
Yeah.
And even the ladies on the committee are older than the girls we used to have in those days. I think girls is the wrong term, but in the 1940s and 50s, young women were girls.
Right.
It's not politically correct now, but they were then. So the people running the conventions are certainly much older. The people going to conventions, I think you're still getting the same mix. Maybe not as many young teenagers. Perhaps I haven't been to a Worldcon, and you're last in Chicago, what, 9 years ago?
9 years ago.
9 years ago. And I didn't see the large number of teenagers running around there, but I didn't see a number of old men either. No graybeards.
Okay.
So there's a better mix today, but in general, the general level is older, yes. I think the teenagers that we got in our years, in our conventions, have drifted off and found other hobbies. Maybe they're at home playing games on the computer.
Could be.
Mm-hmm. And guess what now? If you'll look to your right, the Q lady's going to hold up another card.
How about fanzines is what she's holding up.
Uh-huh.
You know, back when things started, they were important, and you said, you know, you founded the Illinois
Fantasy Fictioneers.
Fictioneers, and the Fictioneers published things to promote the convention. Now, you know, nowadays the convention puts out some official programming, but fanzines are a lot less important, or at least they seem to be a lot less important in fandom.
Also, the reason I believe, for one thing, is the proliferation of computers. Have you noticed how websites are taking over what fanzines used to do?
Hi,
I found lots of...
is this the person to whom I am speaking?
is that going to bother you? Are you going to pick it up? Okay.
You're a computer, are you?
I'm finding a lot of fanzines on computers now, on websites.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And I suspect that people who would have been cranking out mimeographs are now turning to the web instead.
Some are. I mean, postage hasn't gone down.
No,
And,
true.
You know,
Well, I
some
found,
of the things on the web are pretty free.
yes, I found everything from Ansible to 770 on there. And Dick, the one in Baltimore,
Dick Lynch,
Dick Lynch,
Yeah.
he and Nikki put theirs on.
they do.
And you go to
Oh,
the FANAC site in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
you can find fanzines going back to my day. In fact, they've got some of my fanzines on there.
Yes, they do.
Mhm.
But I'll interrupt you.
So-
Something-
I don't know. Some of us are still publishing on paper, and I've talked with Dick and Nikki Lynch about this and
Mhm.
some of the other folks. We think we still get a better response when we send out things on paper.
I prefer to read it on paper because then I can do it leisurely. Whereas if I find it on the net,
Oh,
I rush through it, the whole thing in a few hours one evening.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather keep the fanzine like this one, and I could go day by day by day, go back to I'll read maybe 10 pages today and the next 10 pages tomorrow.
Mhm.
Or I'll jump to the rear and read all the letters first and then go back and read the articles in front. It's like reading the old excuse we used to use for Playboy. I never look at the pictures, I just read the articles.
Right.
So I never look at the articles, I just read the letters.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, those times have changed too. I don't know if Playboy even runs science fiction anymore. At one time it was a big important market.
Do they still have the same editor? I met her at one time. She came to one of the Chicago conventions because one of the science fiction writers, who also had sold a science fiction novel to her, was coming to town.
Okay.
So she came down to the airport or the train or whatever, met him, and came to the convention with him. And I'm trying. My memory's too poor. I can't remember who the guy was. And I no longer remember the name of the woman editor. But do you know, to your knowledge, have they changed editors
I believe so.
recently, within the last few years?
I believe so, yeah.
Because this woman, I met this lady, and she and the author who came to town spent the weekend together. I'm trying to tell you something without saying so. They were that good a friend.
Okay.
He was out of town, in California, New York, or whatever. And she was stationed in Chicago, of course, and she
Right.
had bought and published one of his,
Right.
either a short story or a novel, I don't know which. So naturally, when he came to town, she wanted to show him town.
Yeah.
But they came down to one of the Chicago conventions, spent the weekend together, and that's where I met them. I partied with them for
Okay.
1 or 2 nights. In fact, at that time, at that particular convention, I recall Playboy threw a party at the hotel, and she was in charge of it, being the hostess.
Right.
And that's how I got to meet them. I was invited to the by invitation only party. That's what it was.
A
And-
secret pro party.
Yes, one of those dirty secret pro parties. But the door was wide open. Anybody walking up and down the hall could have walked in and seen it.
Mhm.
And you know, strangely enough, I cannot remember her name, and I can't remember his name. But they were both famous. She was a famous editor, and he was a famous writer. But it escapes me now.
Well, maybe it's just as well.
Mm-hmm. I ain't no dummy. I know when to keep my mouth shut.
Yeah. Save that story for later. Any other thoughts? Gosh.
I have run out of ideas. I truly have.
You know, we don't have to use up the entire day.
No.
Oh, there's nothing else about Chicons or early fandom?
I think, you know, another issue of
really
lasagna
talked
would be in
about
order.
Chicon.
Oh,
3 much.
sure. They have to be printed now. I no longer have a mimeograph.
I
We
think,
Unless
print
we
it?
borrowed your
I think we
Gestetner.
could borrow Mike Gestetner for that.
Mhm.
I'd be willing to print that fanzine for you.
How would you expect me to supply it? On paper or on CD?
Either way.
You could email it.
You could email it.
Yes. But you know, I've been having trouble. I told you I sent an article to Marcy and Barry,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to send it twice because they never got the first edition. Until after I sent the revision,
Funny how email
a day or
is.
so later, then they got the first edition. In the beginning, when I first heard from them, I sent the first version off, first draft off. The next day it came back, and she wrote back and says, "We don't have it. Can you send it again?" So I revised it and sent it again, and then
Okay.
the next day she came back and said, "Well, the first one got here."
Okay.
Now,
That's
is there
their email. I've had trouble sending stuff
is,
to them.
is there a choke point in Chicago that prevents this stuff from coming in the same day?
I don't think the internet is organized as Chicago or not Chicago, but there's a choke point near them. We don't have that trouble that I know of.
I don't think we do, because
Yeah.
for example, when I hear from members of my family,
Mm-hmm.
my daughter's in the habit of sending me, when she sends an email, she'll also get on ICQ,
Uh-huh.
which is almost instantaneous. Say, email coming, and it'll be here within 3 to 5 minutes.
Okay.
It's that fast from Florida. But Marcy got worried that they hadn't showed up for 2 or 3 days.
You know, you said you were in an internet chat room, and you know they were talking about fanzines there. And
Yes, there is a Spanish chat room called Pinky's Place. Excuse me. We meet every Tuesday night on one of the regular there are a number of regular chat rooms where you can go and arrange for a private room.
Mhm.
Arrange with the owner of the thing for a private room. So Pinky's Place meets in a private room on this other, what do they call, well, they call them chat rooms, but there's actually several rooms there.
Okay.
And every Tuesday night, any number from 10 to 20 or 30 of us will meet and talk about, they talk about everything. Pinky, for example, is an aviator, so he likes to talk about airplanes.
Okay.
And somebody else will talk about, well, there are a number of people from St. Louis who put on conventions, St. Louis conventions. They'll talk about their cons.
Okay.
Excuse me, Name That Con and
Right.
our con. Tom, you're going to have to cut that out.
Okay. That's what we have an editor for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I talk about fanzines,
Mhm.
and there's a fella in Kansas City. Again, you've met him, Keith.
Okay.
He talks about fanzines.
Yeah.
In fact, he contributes to them. There's a woman in California named Cleo. This is her web name, Cleo. She publishes a fanzine.
Okay.
So that's how we get into it. And somebody will bring up fanzines and airplanes, maybe a half a dozen different topics. And we'll go on for 2, sometimes as much as 3 hours, between, say, 8 and 11 o'clock on Tuesday nights.
So fandom's not dead, is it?
No. And I understand that Bill Bowers in Cincinnati publishes a fanzine on the web. I've never seen it, but
He's been mailing his stuff out, yeah, or emailing his stuff out.
I think he publishes. Doesn't he reprint his own stuff? What's the name of his fanzine?
Outworld.
Outworld.
Yeah.
Doesn't he put Outworlds on the net? I think he does.
He's been putting things up, yeah. Now, we've been looking at putting Stead up. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm not anxious to put the latest issue up. It's too big.
It'd be an awful lot of work. It really would.
Well, on the other hand, I kind of like to hold it back. I kind of like the paper copies to be first because, we really do get responses from the paper stuff.
I can well believe it.
Didn't get a laugh from Bob.
No, we didn't. Not even on the emailed one.
Really? I didn't acknowledge or say something about.
Well, if she says you didn't, you must
No,
not have.
I'll take her word for it, but I certainly thought.
Not too late.
Okay. Well, you sent that to me months and months ago.
Yeah. Well, there's a deadline for the next issue coming up, and so if you want to have a chance to get a letter in, you have to hurry.
I found my name in it.
Yeah.
You actually printed my name in there.
We do that.
And that makes me famous.
Well, I'm not
You
sure
were
it
famous
makes
already.
you famous, but it doesn't hurt to have a little boost.
When I pulled your leg, you're supposed to look sweet and innocent.
I can't look sweet and innocent. I've heard too many of your stories.